At 2 a.m., I was startled awake by a sound no solar engineer wants to hear. A surge alarm blaring from my grid console like a wailing banshee. Disoriented, I stumbled out of bed, eyes still adjusting, to find my inverter displaying an inexplicable load spike of over 11 kW. This was nearly 3 times the usual nightly draw, originating from my outdoor port. Baffled and incensed, I hurriedly dressed, grabbed a flashlight, and headed outside with my phone. There, illuminated by moonlight, was a sleek white Tesla Model X plugged into my private solar charger, watched over by Karen from the HOA, arms folded confidently. She looked at me unapologetically and said, "Your charger wasn't being used overnight, so I thought I'd save some money." I blinked, thinking this must be a dream. I laughed and filed it for my counter-complaint. I consulted my lawyer, prepared a legally solid case for utility theft and defamation, and sent Karen a cease and desist through him, detailing potential legal repercussions for further attempts on my energy system. It was a strategic move to corner her legally, revealing her overreach and saving myself from future HOA-induced nuisances. For a bit of amusement, I set up a digital display at the edge of my property, drawing power from the solar grid. The screen showcased cheeky messages such as, "Private energy zone, trespassers will legally be zapped," and "Stealing sunlight? Really, Karen?" It was bold and impossible to ignore, quickly capturing attention. By the weekend, it became the talk of the neighborhood. Curious neighbors started dropping by, inquiring about the brewing drama. I didn't instigate the interest, but apparently some local teens got their hands on footage of Karen's Tesla being zapped and gave it a dramatic edit with music, posting it on social media. The clip, titled, "Tesla Karen Gets What She Deserves," went viral, amassing over 2 million views in a matter of days. Suddenly, Karen wasn't just our local HOA headache. She was infamous online for all the wrong reasons. The video depicted her plugging in her car confidently, only to leap back in terror as sparks illuminated her luxury vehicle like it was Christmas. My sign appeared in the background, enhancing the spectacle. The accompanying caption read, "That's what you get for stealing volts, Karen." This notoriety did her no favors. While she roamed the neighborhood, attempting to salvage her reputation, other HOA board members began receiving complaints from fed-up residents. Some even expressed gratitude towards me for confronting her. Fred, a neighbor down the street, rewarded me with a 6-pack of beer, declaring, "You're the hero we didn't know we needed." Heroics weren't my aim, though. Accountability was. With the HOA calling an emergency meeting to address the energy issues, I arrived prepared. Convening at the community center, Karen sat up front, appearing tense and nervously glancing about as if on trial. Positioned near the back, I had my folder ready. Leonard initiated the discussion by listing grievances, including mine, before giving Karen the floor. She resorted to her usual defense, claiming she believed the charger was publicly accessible due to its external location, lacked initial warnings, and only used it during off-peak hours. Then she turned combative, accusing me of tampering, humiliation, and harassment. Granted a turn to speak, I presented the evidence calmly, dates, footage, logs, and explained the nature of a closed solar grid, potential risks, and associated costs. Each board member received an indexed information packet from me, and I reminded them of the previously installed warning sign and a cease and desist letter now on record. Silence enveloped the room. When Karen attempted to interject, Leonard intervened, reminding her that she was informed not to use the port and that her continuous unauthorized use was not accidental. The board swiftly voted, suspending Karen as treasurer pending further review and retracting the violation against me. An apology was advised, though no one assumed she'd oblige. As I exited, I encountered Karen in the parking lot, glaring and tensely crossing her arms. "This isn't over," she warned through clenched teeth. I simply smiled back. "No, it's just beginning. hinting at the final move I planned. Her Tesla's sparking was just the precursor. Real fireworks were yet to come. Perhaps after enduring public embarrassment and board suspension, Karen might have conceded, retreating into obscurity like many who become viral jokes. But she wasn't like most. She went for broke. 2 days post-HOA meeting, something unusual caught my eye while fetching the mail. My solar control panel's protective casing showed signs of tampering. The lock bore scratches, evidence of someone attempting to break in. Custom fitted and fastened with tamper-proof screws, I was the sole key holder. Alarmed, I checked the backyard security footage. There, at 2:46 a.m., clear as day, Karen, clad in black as if filming a low-budget spy movie, crouched by my panel, attempting to pry it open with a tool. She kept nervously glancing around, frustrated when the screwdriver slipped, cursing audibly without caution. Despite her brazen persistence, she lacked gloves or a mask, just unadulterated audacity. Her attempt to infiltrate my core grid system wasn't just entitlement, it was criminal recklessness. Had she succeeded, a major battery bank short or electrical fire could have resulted. I immediately secured the video evidence and contacted my lawyer. The next step involved the local sheriff's office. When Deputy Morales, a calm, savvy, and amiably bemused officer, reviewed the footage, he remarked, "She's got guts. No smarts, but guts." He took my statement, classified it as trespassing and attempted vandalism, and assured that they'd visit Karen. The following day, 2 patrol cars stationed outside her residence. Observing from my office window, I saw her standing on her porch, clad in fuzzy slippers, arguing ardently with officers, and clutching a cup of herbal tea as if it were a shield. Her protest of harassment was ironically rich, given her persistent intrusion on my property and unauthorized power siphoning. But it wasn't. This incident reshaped my understanding of how entitled some people could be. I had built that solar grid myself. As an electrical systems engineer, I crafted each wire, battery bank, and inch of my off-grid setup with care. It symbolized not just energy, but independence. I assume this marked the conclusion, with law enforcement now involved, leaving her no choice but to relent. Yet Karen wasn't done. Her next play involved the local news. A couple of days later, a regional news crew arrived in our neighborhood. A silver van with a satellite dish pulled up, and a reporter named Chase Laram, sweating under the sun, stepped out with a mic, accompanied by a seemingly reluctant cameraman. As I worked on my porch, they approached. Chase offered a courteous smile and introduced their interest in neighborhood disputes and energy disputes. Sensing Karen as their source, I proposed one condition for speaking, allowing me to present my side, complete with documentation, which he accepted. Inviting them into my workspace, I presented detailed accounts, my off-grid solar array, smart inverter logs, surveillance footage, tamper attempt, and even the famous Tesla spark footage. Each piece of evidence widened Chase's eyes. The previously silent cameraman finally queried, "Wait, she really thought this belonged to the HOA?" I confirmed, adding her repeated attempts at taking what's not hers highlighted the entitlement. Upon leaving, Chase seemed poised to reassess the story angle. The segment aired that night, defying Karen's expectations. Initially featuring her discussing the idea of shared community resources and a troublesome neighbor, it transitioned to the sheriff elaborating on her trespassing investigation. Clips followed of me explaining off-grid systems and providing evidential video. The anchor concluded, "In this case, the sun may be free, but the infrastructure isn't." The irony had me laughing so hard I nearly spilled my drink. Karen's on-air demeanor was a sight, nervous and twitchy, reflecting realization of her overestimation. After the broadcast, neighborhood dynamics shifted. Unexpectedly, I received messages from unfamiliar residents. One man from a few blocks over, fined for a flagpole violation, noted how wrong he was once Karen's antics were laid bare. Another person left a note on my porch, expressing thanks for standing against the HOA tyrant. Karen's reign as a fearsome board member crumbled, transitioning to community pariah. Residents began avoiding her, and the Facebook group disseminated memes about her Tesla incident. One captioned, "When you try to charge for free and end up paying in dignity." The definitive blow occurred during the HOA's public vote, not only for board reinstatement, but her removal. Disguised by sunglasses and scarf, Karen feebly contended she championed equity in neighborhood energy, but few bought it. The vote was an overwhelming 34-2 for permanent removal. Those two votes belonged to Karen and her visibly embarrassed husband. As the meeting concluded, I walked past her still unrepaired Tesla, noting a sticker reading, "Charge responsibly." I wasn't the origin, but appreciated its sentiment. Despite this setback, I sensed Karen hadn't thrown in the towel. Her propensity for escalation suggested she wasn't out of surprising moves yet. And I was just getting started, because if she thought she could keep pushing her luck, I had only begun designing a new protocol, a completely legal and thoroughly documented anti-theft system. Next time she attempted anything, the sparks wouldn't just fly. They'd come with tangible consequences, powered by voltage. It seemed Karen had an off switch, but whether she didn't know where it was or had torn it out ages ago was unclear. After the debacle aired on the news, her Tesla incident became the funniest story whispered among neighbors over fences and laughed about as they gathered on trash day. Her embarrassment should have been the end of it, but it only seemed to fuel her as fire does with diesel. A silent week passed, which made me more uneasy than her typical antics. Just as I hoped the chaos had ceased, she resurged with a fresh plan, signaling she was done with subtle sabotage. She was ready for open warfare. It began with a letter, not from the HOA this time, but from a local environmental compliance group. The letter accused me of operating an unlicensed energy distribution center, alleging I was maintaining unsafe voltage systems without city oversight. Initially, I chuckled, but then I examined the fine print. It was routed through a third-party complaint platform, allowing anonymous tips about code breaches. Someone had taken steps to make it seem authentic, listing bogus permit infringements and misquoting local energy laws. Though a sloppy attempt, it was formatted well enough with the right buzzwords to necessitate a city inspection. 3 days later, a compliance officer named Hector came to my door. Unlike the HOA henchman, Hector was courteous and professional. He requested a walkthrough and apologized before stepping onto my property. I invited him inside, gave him a tour of the solar grid, showed him the installation permits, safety documentation, system logs, and even detailed my anti-theft measures. Hector took photos, nodded frequently, and at the visit's conclusion, he shook my hand and remarked, "Honestly, this is among the safest setups I've encountered. Whoever submitted that complaint doesn't know power systems." That affirmed what I suspected. Karen was behind it. Who else would go to such petty lengths? I knew she wouldn't relent. And here was Karen, notorious for previously criticizing me over unapproved solar panels, now quietly siphoning power for her luxury car as if it were akin to borrowing a cup of sugar. My system had safeguards, but nothing prepared me for this level of HOA overreach. The first time I met Karen was at an HOA meeting where she volunteered, by default as no one else wanted the job, as treasurer. She coined herself as the Executive Officer of Community Standards, throwing her weight around with fines for absurd reasons, such as mailboxes not being a prescribed shade of beige or grass being too green. Most neighbors complied to avoid hassle, so I started orchestrating my final move. But before I could act, fate presented the perfect opportunity, cloaked in poetic justice you couldn't better script if you tried. During a community center movie night, as the neighborhood watched a film together, the power suddenly went out mid-screening. The projector shut off, the popcorn machine sputtered to halt, and all nearby lights blinked off, leaving friends and neighbors bewildered in darkness. Panic was minimal, as this wasn't the first blackout, but what distinguished this one was that my house, merely a block away, shone like a Christmas postcard. Every light was on. My security system was fully functional. My porch fan idly spun while the rest of the block scrambled for flashlights. Within minutes, half the gathering pointed toward my house, murmuring. I sat sipping my drink, witnessing the quiet drama develop around me. That's when Karen, visibly irritated and flushed, stood among the group and shouted, "See, this is what happens when somebody hoards power. We're all stranded in darkness while he lives like royalty." The irony in her statement was so immense it seemed to defy gravity. Onlookers began rolling their eyes. One woman whispered, "He built that system himself." A man added, "At least someone has power. Maybe the HOA should consider solar instead of painting curbs." I remained silent. I stood up, walked home, and switched on my external monitor, displaying live footage from my system's control center. The outage resulted from a fault line tripping in the main grid, a municipal issue, unrelated to me. Yet Karen's envy-driven resentment wasn't about logic. She detested that I possessed something beyond her reach, something she couldn't control. The next morning delivered the final straw. I caught her on camera once more, sneaking into my backyard. This time she wasn't targeting the port. Armed with gardening shears, she attempted to cut the data line connecting a solar panel to the inverter unit. She mistook it for a power line. As soon as she snipped it, a motion sensor triggered an air horn on the panel rig. Its piercing sound cut through the morning air, followed by the noise of Karen landing in mulch. I strolled outside, phone in hand, recording as I approached. Karen was still on the ground, dirt on her elbows, more furious than hurt. "I was trimming your weeds," she stammered. "You have invasive growth along the fence." I glanced at the clearly labeled cable she endeavored to sever and said, "That's my sensor line. Touch it again, and you'll face more than just a noise complaint." She stood, dusted herself off, and stomped away, muttering about legal ambiguities and overreactions. The footage was the puzzle's final piece. I compiled everything, each violation, every visit, every incident. That day, my lawyer filed a formal restraining order, but I didn't stop there. I drafted a community proposal and presented it at the next HOA forum, the Solar Education and Energy Boundaries Policy. It outlined guidelines for understanding private energy systems, penalties for tampering, and suggestions for neighborhood solar investment opportunities. Framed as a progressive policy, everyone recognized its true intention: a bureaucratic middle finger. The proposal passed overwhelmingly, even with Diane, Karen's sole ally, voting in favor. Karen skipped the meeting entirely, hiding like a cat licking its wounds. Her Tesla, unchanged on the curb, still bore scars of her late-night charging debacle. Someone had placed a solar-powered garden gnome on its hood, wearing sunglasses and holding a sign saying, "Respect the current." At night, my system glowed serenely, its power humming harmoniously. The tumult was finally dissipating. Karen's options were exhausted, and reason prevailed over drama in our neighborhood. But I sought more than victory. I wished to dissuade future attempts. So I began constructing a small display box for my property. Inside, I intended to place Karen's melted Tesla charging cable, the one that sparked so spectacularly, as a lasting reminder, not only to her, but to anyone tempted to steal from a project forged with passion, expertise, and patience. My energy grid wasn't just circuits and volts, it was a fortress, and Karen learned firsthand that provoking the current ends in a shock. Karen vanished from the neighborhood's social sphere as the storm finally exhausted. The woman once confidently disciplining over trash bins and unapproved lawn decor was reduced to spying through her blinds, feigning indifference. Her Tesla remained parked, the melted charger port standing as an ego monument. Residents passed it quietly, some smirked, some shook heads, but none dared move it. I erred by placing an outdoor battery unit near the fence, matching the house in fully legal. Karen claimed it invited theft and disrupted visual harmony, leveraging her pseudo-authority to order its removal or face escalating fees. I showed her my city-approved permits, proving my system's compliance and independence. She disliked my defiance. Later, a warning letter from the HOA, printed in Comic Sans, arrived. I shredded it, laughing it off. The tale was now common lore. The woman who tried to siphon solar energy from a private grid and was retaliated against by fate. But legal closure and a touch of creative closure were still required for me. My lawyer confirmed the judge granted the restraining order, barring Karen from my property or tampering with my equipment. The order included a detailed summary of her trespasses, attempted sabotage, and energy theft, all supported by video evidence. If she even reached over my fence, she would face criminal charges. I knew that would hurt more than any fine. Karen craved control, and losing it publicly was the ultimate punishment. Meanwhile, the HOA's quarterly review invited me to speak. Apparently, my solar education proposal intrigued neighboring communities considering similar guidelines. There I stood, before the same figures who once avoided eye contact, now applauding and taking notes. I conveyed that solar independence didn't imply community exclusion. Boundaries warranted respect. Property entailed responsibility. Energy wasn't just something outside to tap into. You wouldn't walk into someone's garage and borrow tools unasked. Why treat electricity differently? The meeting ended with a little surprise. The board voted to reimburse damages Karen caused from the HOA's emergency budget, adding a sweet note to victory, compensation by the body that once upheld her ridiculous claims. Walking home, I felt an unusual peace. The battle concluded. The storm passed. My grid, my creation, hummed on in perfect harmony. Yet the ultimate satisfaction came days later when a delivery arrived. A wooden crate with a note reading, "For the trophy room." Inside was Karen's original Tesla charging cable, the one that melted and blackened during her notorious, unauthorized hookup. After the Homeowners Association decided her car was a blight, a towing service finally removed it. The company, aware of the viral incident, thought I might appreciate a keepsake, and they weren't wrong. That weekend, I set about my task. I encased the charger in a glass shadow box with a steel plaque inscribed with, "Tamper with the sun, get burned." Placing it near my gate just beneath the solar status screen ensured that passers-by could see it clearly. Soon neighbors were posing for selfies with it. Some interpreted it as art, others viewed it as a modern-day lesson in justice. Kids dubbed it the Zap Relic, with one teen remarking, "Bro, this is better than any no trespassing sign." I concurred. The subsequent weeks were blissfully tranquil. No unexpected visits, no false citations, nor passive-aggressive notes. Karen had completely withdrawn. Later, I discovered she'd listed her home for sale, attributing it to a need for a change of scenery. But everyone knew better. Her reputation was in tatters, her sway obliterated, and her pride forever dented. The house languished on the market as prospective buyers pulled out, citing neighborhood gossip as a deterrent. A real estate agent even confessed that the viral video was dampening interest, recounting how people inquired about the infamous Tesla lady. She noted, "It's sort of become a local legend." I didn't indulge in gloating, but remained vigilant in guarding what was mine. I fine-tuned the system, installed a new backup battery array, upgraded the smart load balancer, and expanded the decoy port, ready for any future intrusions. This wasn't paranoia, it was preparedness. Once you've experienced someone skulking around your premises with a screwdriver and garden shears, masquerading as a proponent of communal electricity, you quickly learn the importance of being ready. Soon, a letter arrived, not from Karen, but from the city. They'd watched the newscast, read the ensuing blog posts, and heard about the HOA changes. They wanted to nominate me for a local sustainability award. I laughed out loud at the proposal, not from lack of gratitude, but from realizing just how far we'd traveled from a woman casually plugging her car into someone else's power source as if it were her own. What began as trivial theft evolved into discussions about autonomy, boundaries, and the value of managing one's energy. If that dialogue needed a spark and a scorched Tesla cable to begin, then so be it. The award ceremony took place at the Civic Center. It was an understated event with folding chairs, a modest platform, and a few plaques awarded to individuals contributing to eco-friendly initiatives in the city. When my name was announced, I made my way to the applause, received the plaque, and kept my remarks succinct. I advised, respect your neighbors, respect the grid, and don't underestimate the small-mindedness of those who fail to grasp either. This elicited some laughter, even a chuckle from the mayor. Upon returning home that evening, I paused in front of my property, surveying the system I had constructed, the panels, the batteries, the inverters, all shining consistently and cleanly. Reflecting on the drama, the plots, the sabotage, and the sparks, I recalled the lasting image of Karen covered in mulch, yelling at an air horn, her ambitions unraveling in the dirt. She believed power equaled control, that she could take unrestrained without repercussion. But now, this wasn't about taste, it was theft. Standing before the Tesla's charger, I confronted her. "You can't tap into someone's private energy system, Karen," I implored. She dismissively claimed, "We're all one community," as if that warranted her actions. I was stunned by her logic, treating my custom setup like a shared commodity. I reiterated the HOA's lack of jurisdiction over my grid, to which she countered, "You should thank me for charging cleanly." It was a war declaration. But she misunderstood that true power isn't derived from a title, a vote, or unauthorized use of a charger. It comes from recognizing what's yours, defending it with reasoning, and letting the voltage handle the rest. As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon and my grid transitioned into its nightly routine, I leaned on the gate with a smile. No words were needed. The energy spoke volumes. I didn't react angrily. I logged the incident. The grid showed a 73% drain over 4 hours, a nearly full charge worth several dollars with added battery wear. Retrieving security footage showed an established pattern of unauthorized usage. The next morning, I approached Karen, seeking resolution calmly with printed evidence. She smirked, dismissing my request for compensation, and shut the door. She later filed an HOA complaint against me for hoarding renewable energy. Her audacity stunned me until a notice of violation arrived in my mailbox, prompting me to strategize. That night, I'd had enough. Crafting a decoy outlet with an unstable surge loop, I set up a trap, a legal and safe but alarming voltage shock for any unauthorized user. By Friday, the decoy was ready, marked with a warning, "Do not use." Predictably, Karen ignored it. Early Saturday, my console alerted a surge. Watching on camera, there she was, plugging in, triggering sparks in a smoking charger. She recoiled dramatically. The trap worked. Expecting backlash, instead I faced a mob, Karen and 2 HOA members, her Tesla looming behind them. "You tampered with my car," she accused. Leonard, a board member, tried to mediate. I retrieved my dossier, presenting them evidence of Karen's deeds. Leonard's shock was palpable. Karen's bravado faltered only momentarily before insisting I damaged her property. Unfazed, I cited her unauthorized actions as the cause, documenting her trespass. That afternoon, I received another violation from the HOA for installing dangerous equipment.